I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands.
Welcome to Build an Iconic Life podcast. I'm your host, Chris Whitehead, and this podcast is dedicated to help you build a life with zero regrets by focusing on how you have everything you need to stand up, stand out, and live life on your terms. Let's dive right in. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Build an Iconic Life. I'm here with a really good friend of mine, Lisa Parda. She owns RealtyScape Brokerage, and she started a new business recently. What is it?
Stars at Night Publishing.
Stars and...
At Night. Like
Stars
Van
at
Gogh.
Night Publishing. Now,
Van Gogh.
why'd you start Stars at Night Publishing?
Because I wanted to be a writer. And I researched enough about the publishing industry to know that while I was going to be an entrepreneur and run a business, and I was going to try to do the work of writing a book, finding an agent, having someone pitch that, and all of that, I thought, I'm a business person. I can figure this out. And I can definitely get published. Where if I just try to find an agent, I might never get published.
Okay.
And so it was about executing the thing I wanted done.
How long have you wanted to write a book?
Since I was a child.
Since you were a child.
I've always been a reader.
Okay.
And I was always transformed by writing.
Okay.
So I wanted to contribute in something I've only ever been a consumer in.
Yeah, and we were talking about this earlier. Only 1% of the entire population actually ever gets published.
You're a published author?
Yep. It was actually for me, and yours is getting ready to come out, so it's going to be really cool. For me, it was surreal, right? So you see your name on a book, you start reading it, and you're like, oh, I didn't even remember I wrote those words. Then you see your picture on the book. Then you actually start seeing people say thank you. Your first book's going to be a cookbook.
It is.
And it's not a slouch of a cookbook. Like I know Robyn came over and you guys were doing videos and you had professional photographers.
I had a food stylist and a food photographer come over.
A food stylist.
And a food editor who edits the color of the salmon to be real salmon color if it doesn't get picked up right on the digital photography and all of that. And that's what I was missing when I was trying to do the photos myself. It was kind
of washed out?
Yes, because I've always been a photographer. I love photography. And I thought, well, it's just food. I'll photograph it. But in digital, there's so much after editing that's done. And food, sometimes it's like, well, why doesn't it look like the orange color that the salmon is on digital? And I didn't know enough about it. So then I finally just had to give up. And I did the pictures and I made a mistake. And then I had to hire a food photographer and a food stylist.
What kind of cookbook?
So this is the thing. Everybody wants it to be a theme. It's American cooking. It's this cooking, but it's the food that I make in my life while I have another life. I'm not by trade a chef or a cookbook author. Okay. I'm a real estate broker.
Yeah.
Right. So I have to somehow have delicious food that works in a life where I'm running a business and I'm out on Saturdays and I'm out on Sundays and I'm out till 8 o'clock at night. So it's all of the food that I've cooked over the last 30 years that you cannot find in other cookbooks.
Oh, cool.
So I wanted to make sure you didn't have the Mediterranean salad or the tomato salad because everyone has that because it photographs beautifully. So everybody wants that. But I gave the food that when I make it and I give it to people, they want the recipe.
Robyn's mom, when I was batching it, living on my own, she and I were dating. Her mom gave me a cookbook. It's like 5-minute meals. And it was like perfect for a guy like me because if I'm actually going to cook and not buy it out, it better be made in 5 minutes.
Yes. And I think Rachel Ray did a really good job of doing the 30-minute meal. Yeah. And some of my meals are made after work and are really, really quick. And then others you make on a day where you have a little bit of time and you can have leftovers. Yeah. It's real life cooking.
Yeah. And I've eaten your food and you're really, really good at cooking.
Thank you.
The thing that was cool about my book is I didn't have 300 photos that I had to edit through. It's just written word. And that was pretty intense. But I would imagine that it's a hell of a process to put together like a good looking cookbook. I know when they used to show like McDonald's food or Burger King or whatever, they would have people come in with brushes and they would make the glaze, but it was actually just polyurethane or something. You can't eat it, but it's to make it look tasty.
Yeah, it's to make it look like McDonald's food doesn't look like that. How do you make McDonald's food look
Doesn't taste
appetizing?
like
It
that
doesn't taste like that either. And so part of my thing with the food stylist was, we're going to eat this food because I just spent $1,500 on ingredients.
Yeah.
We're all going to eat this food. And the food stylist said, and I said, plan to take some stuff home. And she said, no, we don't eat the food. And I thought, oh, okay. First thing we do is macadamia white chocolate chip cookies. And she's like, well, we can have one now. And then they just started eating. And by the second day, they were eating my food for lunch.
How cool is that?
Yeah. And they thought it was delicious.
That's good. Let's get into a better topic. We were actually, so just full transparency to everyone. We were supposed to start recording this like 2 hours ago.
Yes.
And we pulled Lisa and Chris, like we just talked outside for a couple hours. I love talking to you, but one of the themes that came up was this idea of resistance and growth inside of resistance. And I want you to describe, because anybody out there that's considering writing a book, part of Iconic, we talk about publishing yourself. We talk about getting on social media. We talk about expansion. And I'm not the only person that does it. I will tell you that I resisted it for a very, very long time. And I'm very glad that I finally took the leap. Because it's not only made my businesses successful. Hell, I own more than one because of it. But it not only made my businesses successful, it gave me opportunity that I would have never had any other way. And we were talking about that same thing has happened to you. And for me, like just again, full transparency, like I have a best-selling book. I don't make a lot of money on the book. I make maybe $3 a copy. So I never wrote that book to make money on the book. I wrote that book to brand me in a certain way. I wrote that book to get my information out. And I wrote that book because when everybody else hands a business card, I don't have business cards. I'm going to give you my book. You're not going to throw my book away. You're also going to see my name on the front of it. It's going to remind you of me. And it's just the top of mind kind of process. But you wanted to write a book since you were a kid. You started telling me about some of the resistance that has come up in the book. It led to this whole last 5%. I want to get into all of that. And I want to hear your words on it again.
Okay. So I was a child. I'm an only child. I have two parents who didn't go to college, but read. Very well read parents. And they found reading valuable. So I would participate in their date night and go to Harvard Square, and we would just wander bookstores. And I was allowed to buy whatever book I wanted.
Really?
Yes. They really valued the written word. That's how they learned. They were voracious readers. And so you read a lot of books. And as a child, there wasn't the young adult section. I'm 51. So the young adult came later. So I was reading Ramona the Brave and then Stephen King because there was nothing to go into in between.
Me too.
Right? I remember reading Misery when it came out in the early 80s in hardback because my mother had it in hardback. And she goes through it in 2 or 3 days. And now I'm reading it. And I said, this is the most honest thing I've ever written, even though it was a nightmare. It was a horror story. And I knew it wasn't honest, but I thought this is what a writer who falls asleep and dreams about a fan, who writes horror, comes up with. And I felt like I was reading just this honest, horrible dream from this guy, right? And I was really quite enamored with the idea that it was almost like telepathy. I can make you think certain things. I can make you feel certain things. So I was really overly touched by the written word. And I could read real things. I could read true stories. I could read about other places. And I just found this magical world as an only child in books. And I thought someday I'm going to do that too. I'm going to be the person putting the seeds in your mind. I'm going to be the person telling you the story. And so I always had this idea, and since my mother was a reader, I come from home from school, and she'd say, tell me a good story. And I either held her interest or I didn't hold her interest, right? I had to embellish the right details. You had to make something seem funny, and so it was always like practicing the art of being interesting for 5 minutes, telling the story of breaking down that makes you want to hear it for 2 minutes. Everyone breaks down. No one wants to hear your story. So as I got older and older and I started reading better and better books, better and better authors, learning better and better stories, the pressure to write my story became the pressure that was too big, the resistance that was too big. It was the story I started a million times and never got anywhere. So I thought, you know what? Everybody always wants my recipes. I'm always giving people my recipes. I'm going to make the cookbook be the first one. I'm going to make the resistance of doing the hardest thing I'm probably ever going to do as far as being vulnerable, being authentic, and taking a dream that has been with me since I can remember my first memories and bringing that to life. I'm going to have to overcome a lot. I might as well do it in a way that I feel like I can do a good job into something that I know is wanted. People always want my recipes.
Sure.
So I made the cookbook the first book.
Okay.
And then I do have other stories in me.
Yeah. So I remember 2002. I got serious about writing my first book. It was going to be a fiction book, and I fizzled out. You know, and
it's going to be a fiction book.
Yeah.
What's it going to be about? Do you remember your theme?
Somewhat. I remember I had characters in there like Seraphim, which, is like code name for an angel. And it was definitely almost kind of like Ruth from the Christian Bible. This lady doesn't belong with this family. They're rich. She marries in. Her husband dies. The brother marries her. She ends up becoming the person that everybody esteems. Then she goes on trips. And so this whole thing was from a young guy's perspective. And I'll never forget my first wife. I wrote like the first chapter. And I think I started off with I was floating in water and I could, I could see through the water, the sky that was up there, but and so I was using all these metaphors. And I remember she read it and I was like, what do you think? And she was like, I don't understand any of it. And I immediately was like, not interested in it. And when it came to putting this book together, the same fears, like who wants to read what I have to write? Who wants to, will anybody actually purchase this? Worse, what if people start saying that it's horrible?
I read your book. I love it.
Thank you.
There's one chapter I constantly still reread.
Oh, cool. Which one? Do you know?
No is a complete sentence.
Yes. That was
I need to learn that lesson all the time.
That was a heck of a lesson.
So I just keep rereading it.
I paid a guy a lot of money to learn that lesson. And it was true. I would, the side note, the reason that lesson came about was somebody on social media wanted me to join their wine buying club. And this guy was a sommelier. And so I was not coaching with him at the time, but he became my coach. And this person reached out to me a little bit later. And I went to him and I said, hey, are these good wines? Because it was, $100 a month or something. And he goes, Chris, no, they're not. And I said, well, she's kind of a friend. She's kind of at the time it was Think to Succeed, if you remember that.
I do.
And I said, I don't really know how to say no thank you and not lose face. And he goes, Chris, no is a complete sentence. And I just sat there like in this pregnant silence of like, you going to tell me more about that? And then like, no, that's the lesson, man. No is a complete sentence.
It's the whole chapter. No is a complete sentence.
Yeah. And so literally she reached back out to me again. And I just said, no, thank you. And that was the end of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that wasn't nearly as bad as I had it played in my mind. And that there are a whole bunch of lessons that come from just telling your truth. But coming back into the resistance part, and I've helped a lot of clients through it too. Like it can become scary to write on social media. It can become scary to do video. It can become scary to do a podcast like we're doing right now. It's like, what are we going to talk about? Don't worry about it. The reason that the cameras are where they are is so that we can look at each other and people can see us. We don't have to, eyeball a camera and cross-eye.
Have the crickets going while the camera lens is on you.
Have an authentic conversation with somebody and let your value shine. And that's when I started learning for myself, like, hey, I've got something to say, and there are 8 billion people in the world. Maybe not everybody will like it, but maybe it'll help someone. And if it helps even one person, I know I've done something that I'm now in the 1% club. My self-image has risen because I've actually accomplished something. And we were talking about it outside, and you were talking about resistance. You're like, Chris, that's why I do. Tell everybody.
I forget what I said.
Well, it's why I climb the mountains. It's why I do.
Yeah, you're right. So I tend to feel like things aren't going well. I'm an entrepreneur. You have up and down cycles. You have to ride the wave of whatever's going on. I'm a real estate broker. We have no inventory. We haven't had really good inventory in the last 3 or 4 years. Affordability has been at an all-time low. Interest rates started to climb. So it's not fun in my business, but that's how real estate is. It has cycles like anything else, any other kind of business, depending on what people have for their business. They will feel that resistance of things aren't going well. I've got to make some changes. I've got to do some different things. What was working well might not be working. So you're always doing that dance, which involves a lot of obligation and mundane chores. It's the work. It's the work that we don't put on social media. It's the thing that's not exciting enough to see or talk about, right? It's the grind, the trenches.
Yeah.
So what I do is I have to focus on something else. And in that, I have to do something that I cannot do, that I'm a little afraid to do, that probably doesn't make a lot of sense. And it would help if it's in a fitness world. But I did do this with flying back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is it puts me off autopilot.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
a hyper-focused person. Because
And when you're afraid, you are afraid. You are in your body. You have to decide, I have to make sure I'm not dying. I have to do risk versus reward. I have to put some energy forward. I have to get into something. So you change everything about what you're doing, that because you were in this obligation doing the same thing that you always do, all of a sudden you change your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's perspective glasses.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you are in the air looking down at the ground. The world looks so small and insignificant and unimportant. The drama, we can't see the drama of our lives like we can here.
Sure.
When we're out in a boat and you look from the water to the shore, you get a different view. Going and doing all of those events gives me a different view. I always come back refreshed, excited, having met interesting people,
Mm-hmm.
either accomplishing my goal or not accomplishing my goal. The most recent one I did not accomplish the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings me back invigorated with new eyes and new perspective and ready to get back into the day-to-day grind of the work I have to do.
Yep. And I think it also, there's some really important lessons for everybody to learn. So a lot of people feel fear
Mm-hmm.
and they recede from it.
Mm-hmm.
And we were actually talking about the last 5%.
Mm-hmm.
So considering your book, you're in this last 5%. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, it is the hardest part. Yep. Right. And
you would think it's the last 5%. I'm 95% here.
You should coast. Right.
The finish line's right here. Why aren't I there?
And I was telling you, my take on that is the breakdown usually occurs right before the breakthrough. Another way people say it, it's usually darkest before dawn. Right. Mm-hmm. And high performers choose to go do hard things, because what it ends up doing is it does recenter, refocus, re-energize, create new goals. But if we start receding every time that we're fearful, what I'm hearing you say, and I've had the same experience, you actually just get more of the bad stuff. Mm-hmm. And when we were outside talking earlier, in that last 5%, my fear has always been when bad things happen, it's always going to be this way. But the truth is if you can understand that you're very close to the finish line. It's like what Mom told me when I was in college. Like, you can do anything for a semester, Chris. Mm-hmm. I don't have to graduate. I just have to do this semester. I can tolerate pain if I know it's not going to be there forever. Mm-hmm. And I think every human on earth can, when they go, okay, for another 30 days, that's all I got to do. Another 30 minutes, another 3 seconds, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And when you start to put yourself in stressful situations like climbing up a mountain, or I remember one time you were, you sent me this, it was when Instagram first came out, and you were like, it was, I can't remember the guy, but he's an actor and martial artist, and she was a workout person, and you like...
XPT Fitness.
XPT.
And I'm sitting in an ice bath.
Yeah. And like you went off into Neverville to go do this crazy thing.
By myself, because I didn't have any friends that wanted to do it.
And you're like, this almost killed me. But what happens is you come back a better version of who you are. And so...
Well, you come back believing in yourself. You did the thing you didn't think you were going to do.
And it doesn't matter whether you win or whether you learn. It's that you gave yourself the opportunity to do it. Mm-hmm. And so, like I was saying with the book, I had so many people go, how many copies did you sell? How much money have you made on that? I'm like, you're missing the point. Mm-hmm. You're missing the whole point. Number one, I did that for branding, also a business card. But there's a bigger thing. I did something that scared the ever-living shit out of me. Mm-hmm. I speak on stages. That's the number one fear in the world, is public speaking. We're doing podcasts. We do videos. We write content on social media to attract people or to share our opinions. And I think when I look back, not at all the successes that I've had, and I'm grateful for them, But when I really take the time to look back, and a lot of entrepreneurs especially do not, they're in that spot that you talk about, which is it's always like this. I'm always having to deal with the problem.
Yeah.
And so instead of you coasting from peak to peak to peak, you're actually riding that down. I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't take the time to just sit back and go, look at how much you've actually accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look back and see all of the things that I've done, I've been written in Forbes and Wall Street Journal and entrepreneur.com, and I have my own book, and I've spoken on big stages. And it's like, whether I've succeeded or not, I've given me the opportunity to have an experience that very few people ever get to have.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't say that makes me better than other people. I use it as a confidence builder of what else can I do now?
And you also build confidence to start something and finish it. Everyone starts.
Very few finish.
Everyone
Do
starts.
you know that most people that do podcasts never make it? Like 99% do not make it past episode number 7.
Well, I think I heard you should make at least 10 before you publish one.
Mhm.
Because if you don't make 10, you don't have to publish any of them instead of coming out and falling.
Yeah. So one of the techniques that we did our first year is that I did 3 of them every Friday.
Yep.
And we got 6 months ahead of schedule before we published the first one.
Yeah.
And then I just started backing down to 1 per week. And then if we skipped a week, it was not a big deal.
Yes. Yeah. Very smart.
I was trained, I paid a lot of money to learn from people that had already done it. And I was like, wow, this is time stacking. This is a great way to do it. But you're absolutely right. Probably.
Because what gives you confidence besides execution?
Showing up is what gives me the confidence.
Okay. If not me, I don't get confidence from just showing up.
So I get what I'm in. Well, so maybe I should define what that means. Showing up means showing up ready to play the game, not showing up like, hey, I'm here.
Right. And then scooting out the back door.
Right. It's like, no, I'm going to give it my best shot today. And even if my best shot is not my best, I gave it my best shot today. I think people that strive for success, no matter how they define it, are people that are willing to put themselves in the situation and push, push, and they don't make excuses for themselves. Or if they do, they become aware of it and they eliminate it, and they keep driving for higher and higher dreams.
So I'll tell you something. In business, there's a lot of excuses, and COVID really put those on steroids.
Sure.
I think, right? So for a while, I was so sick of hearing why there wasn't this, why there wasn't that, why there wasn't this, that I started to tell people, if you don't hear from me, there's no update.
Okay.
Because what I used to do was an update no matter what. But I was sick of hearing myself say the excuses. And I'm like, it's doing something to my psyche. Hearing me say those things aloud, and I know it's an excuse, is breaking my psyche. It's not good for me anymore. So then people would say, I hadn't heard from you. Yeah, because I have nothing to update you with. Remember I said... But sometimes people would have to say, still want to hear no update. And I had to learn who those people were.
Yeah.
No update is no update.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you it's no update.
Yeah.
No changes. But I learned the rule for myself is no more excuses. I will not say them out loud because they're doing something to me. They're giving myself permission for the execution to not be complete. I don't even want to talk about it. And sometimes you obviously have to talk to clients and all of those other things. But even at home, like, I don't want to talk about it. What happened? I don't want to relive it.
Yeah.
Please don't make me relive it. It's not good for my psyche. You have to protect yourself in a lot of ways, because I think entrepreneurs do things, even if you're doing a business that has been done before, you're doing it differently.
Sure.
In some kind of way.
Yeah.
Right? You're having your own experience and your own adventure and your own journey with it in your own market during that particular time in the economy with the resources you're coming with. Right? And then you feel all alone. You feel all alone. But everyone who has a business has had some type of problem to identify with. That's why I love your pop-up events. Your pop-up events bring people together who might have been feeling alone elsewhere.
But
I really like
being
that.
an entrepreneur is probably one of the loneliest things on earth. I mean, I've been doing it for 25 years. You've been doing it for 20 some odd years.
Yep.
Everybody's there when everything's going well. The loyal people stick around when things start not going well. But there comes a time when they also go, I have to shut the door on, this is your thing, your drama, I know you're going to figure it out.
This is your play, you enact.
And that's when you just sit in the chair and I don't know what, and that's the loneliest, scariest place to be, is I don't have an idea of what to do, but there's always something to do. There's always a resistance.
Or not do.
Well, that's true too.
I read this great book and I can't remember it, so I can't attribute the author, but he said he was playing with his 3-year-old and it was like Legos or something, and it was uneven. So he said, oh, we got to break it down and build it back up and do all of the stuff. And the 3-year-old just like stuck another Lego under the bottom. And he said, did I just get bested?
Yeah,
he was an architect. Did I just get bested by a 3-year-old? So he went into the consulting firm or wherever that he worked, architect firm, and he gave the same problem, and everybody was drawing and they had their little things out. And he was like, no, we all sometimes make things harder. Yeah. Sometimes you don't add more things. When things are going really, really bad, maybe you don't add anything else. Maybe you start withdrawing something.
That's true too.
You know, and sometimes you only know that from either living it or someone that you trust that you will listen to gave you that advice.
I find myself, so when I was younger, especially in business, I thought the harder that I worked, the more money that I would make. I found that not to be true. And I also sometimes found that the more people I hired, the less I made. Interesting topic. But what also, and I was talking to my sister about this the other day, because we have the same quote unquote disease, dis-ease is what I should say, dis-ease. Our bodies will fight against us when we add too much, especially in stressful times.
I'll get sick.
And so we just get sick.
Yeah.
And that's my body's way of saying, sit down, shut up. I'm going to deal with this. You don't have a right.
Yeah.
And a week later I get up.
Yeah.
Another thing that you had said that I think is just pivotal for people, about a year ago, you said that like you could see a goal, but it was through fog. And it was like really, really frustrating. And I was like, wow, in less than a year, like you're on track. And I've known you for 10 or 12 now. And I mean, you've always been successful. You've always done well. But I asked, what do you attribute the most, the biggest
But I still
reason?
Want to make a change in my business.
That's fine. But what do you attribute the most result from of you clearing this fog up in a year? And that's how this whole conversation actually started with resistance, because you said, well, I went and did this thing that scared me beyond belief. What's the thing that you did?
Something I never believed I would do in a million years, which is start a radio show. And what happened was I was in my bank doing my real estate banking, and the branch manager knows that I'm doing the cookbook because I start a business. I've got to open a bank account. I've got to put money into it, right? So she's asking how the cookbook is coming. And at some point you're almost like, oh my God, I don't want to talk about it. It's not going well. You know, I'm in the weeds. I'm under the ground, right? And the owner of a radio station comes in because he also banks at the same bank. And he says, I am so sick of the radio. Everyone is arguing about politics. Everyone's barking their opinion. No one's listening to anything else. It's making boring radio. I don't want it. I want a show to bring people together. I want like a cooking show. And the branch manager says, oh, see her back there in line? She wrote a cookbook. You should talk to her. So he's like, what's your name? I'm like, I'm Lisa. We go and we sit down at the branch and we start talking for 20 minutes. And he says, come on my show tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. Come on my show. I have 2 other guests on. So I show up, again, not thinking, just action.
Yep.
Not thinking.
Yep.
I go on the radio show and I don't say really much because I'm on a radio show. I've never been on a radio show before. It's live. It's going out live.
I get it.
Whatever you say is going out to be heard live.
Right. Can't take that back.
Right. And this radio station owner has had his own show for 20 something years. He has a following. People are listening to the show. So I apparently don't say very much. And then he finally asks me a question about real estate, which I could talk about in my sleep. And I just start going. So then he says, after the show, you can talk about anything you want. You got to come back on the show. I do one more show and then I'm off on my own. And he's like, but we think I'm doing a cooking show, a show for an hour about cooking. And I'm like, is this landing? I don't know anything about anything. Yeah. I am terrified.
Yeah.
I can't see who I'm talking to. I can't see if your face is losing interest and like looking for their phone. I can't see. And I'm doing a couple of them. And then I start thinking, is this landing? Is anyone listening? Do they like it? Do they not like it? But I am starting to get feedback. They're playing it on the city buses. They're playing it in a couple of places because they listened to George's show before.
Mm-hmm.
And then I start thinking, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I committed to doing this thing. I'm still terrified. I don't know if this is landing. I don't know if this is the right thing. Let me bring on a guest. This will ease things out. Let me look at a human being across from me.
Yeah.
Start talking.
Yeah.
So I invite on a guest, and then I invite on Robyn.
Yeah.
And then we have a conversation, and it's easy as drinking water.
Yeah.
It's the easiest thing. And so then I'm like, oh, maybe I need to have guests. George takes me aside and says, no, the show is the two of you. The show is the two of you. And then that morphs into Robyn and I having 2 hours. We talk about food. We talk about this. We talk about that. But what I don't think we can give enough credit to is we have this idea. I'm going to take my cookbook onto the radio and talk about food. Well, that might not really be the thing. You had a goal, but now you might need to reorient yourself a little bit because that might not be the goal. Maybe you have to explore.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do some things wrong. And that's what I started giving myself permission to do once I had the guest on. My expectation on something I don't know what the reality is off.
Sure.
I talked to one of the other radio station people. How do you know if they're I think I'm making a joke. What if no one's laughing? I can't see their face. That's why and George says, you don't have confidence in your own. That's why you need to look across from a person. And he's giving me all his 25 plus years of experience,
Yeah.
right? But I'm needing to go through the experience myself. But it was doing something that I was frightened of, that I really had to, you can't phone it in, you can't mail it in, you're talking by yourself. Do you have enough spit for 2 hours,
Yeah.
right? And you have to sometimes you have to do the thing to know what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we go into business thinking, oh, I'm going to be X. I'm going to
Sure.
buy the plan. I'm going to buy the program. And we still don't feel right because we have to absorb it into who we are so that we can do the work. It's work
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways, but hopefully it's work that you like, hopefully work that keeps you engaged, that keeps you growing, that keeps you interested, that scratches that itch of curiosity that you have. I love people, so talking to people was really great. And what even Robyn and I did was bring on guest after guest after guest, because I'm a business person. I'm going to help other business people. I'm going to bring on business people. And then George said to us, you need to find your own. We need to find out what our show is about. We need to stop filling it in with somebody else when we didn't. And that was the right answer. But it took about 6 months to hear that and really start getting into the groove. Like we had a radio show yesterday and I had a blast doing it. I don't know how it's landed yet. People start telling us,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll find out what they liked or what they didn't like. Like 3 months ago, we did a show and we always we call each other and we plan on talking about a topic.
Yep.
And then I will ask her a question or she will ask a question that we don't know the question, so we can't prepare.
Yep.
We start answering. And sometimes that question lasts 5 minutes. Sometimes it's like we're going into the hour. We haven't started our topic yet.
Yep.
And yesterday was that kind of day. I started with, what's your code name? If you were a spy, what's your code name? Right? I don't know what my code name's going to be. But the other one that got a lot of feedback, I still get a lot of feedback on it, is I like conspiracy theories because I said, are you a fan of conspiracy theories? What's your favorite conspiracy theory? Right? And we never know what's going to work sometimes.
Sure.
And sometimes it's okay being okay with not knowing the answer. I think everyone has a perfectly normal fear of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
So we want everything to be certain, and that's when we start trying to control things. But maybe you don't know the best answer right now for this particular scenario. Maybe you don't know the best answer for the problem. Sometimes exploration and curiosity can be really helpful. And it was in this radio station that got me really engaged again. It really made me pay attention as the day went on to see if I needed to talk about that on the radio, or if it came up multiple times that it might be a conversation that other people might be interested in. So it's just really removed all the fog. It's removed all of the fog.
And what's in place? Now that
some really interesting ideas. So they're like little tiny paths.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all still on a main road.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting off the highway and going on some.
Yeah, you're not frustrating yourself knowing that you just took a dead end road again.
And it's just, where does this road lead? Does it lead up back to that middle road? Does it take a different side street? But if my destination is Florida from Boston, I'm still heading towards Florida. I'm still heading south.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm just trying to take some interesting trips along the way.
You know, it led to us talking about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I was telling you about Dan Pink, who he wrote several books. He worked for Al Gore as a lawyer, but the thing that most impressed me about him, because that certainly didn't, the thing that most, sorry, but what did impress me about him is in 2009, we're having this horrible recession. And he's talking about the difference between management styles of the Industrial Revolution that use a carrot and a stick, right, to prod people along, or incentives. I'll pay you more money. I'll pay you more money. I'll pay you more money. That was not going to help us through this depression that we were going through. You can't just keep adding. You can't just keep adding more dollars into the economy and think that there's not. As another example.
Well, you can't throw money at a problem that's not working.
Correct.
More money does not fix that problem.
Yeah, more wrong doesn't make it right. So what he came up with is a whole bunch of research about companies like Google, companies or innovations like Wikipedia, and how Encarta doesn't exist anymore, the encyclopedia, and that was a Microsoft-based thing, and it had all of the management, all the money, and all the people. But then you gave this free source where people can just go onto a website and define things. So you're giving them autonomy. And then behind that, people start possibly finding their purpose, which is what you're talking about. And in the process of having some freedom to find your purpose, you then desire to become a master at it. And that's how we become excellent at what we do. It's how we build empires on what we're doing. It's how we live a very fulfilled life. And he was suggesting
But if you just tell someone they should work on their purpose, but they don't know truly what their purpose is, you're just going to frustrate the hell out of them.
Oh, well, you're in my conversations 3 years ago.
How many times did you tell me about my purpose? And I'm like, I don't know what my purpose is.
I'm like, I made this course, take this course. And you're like, I went through the course, let's do it. I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm like, I get it. For you, it was about getting the fog out. For you, it was about getting rid of some baggage. For you, it was about letting go of some things that had happened in your past. And ultimately, the real message that I want the audience to hear is that you took a chance on you again. And you took a chance on you when you became a pilot. You took a chance on you when you moved to Hawaii and started selling real estate. You're telling me that story. Like you go from living in a $90,000 home, that's all you'd ever bought, and you're on an island now selling homes for $600,000, and you're like hotcakes selling them, and you're like, I'm winning. And the owner of that company said, why are you only selling $600,000 homes? And you're like, because it's more than I've ever sold.
Yeah. What are you talking about? This is so much money. $600,000 on a home people aren't going to live in.
and then all he did was say to you, you don't know how much money people have or what they really want to buy. Quit limiting people. And that message also means quit limiting you. And so you turned around and said, okay, I'll trust you. And you started selling $2.4 million and $4.5 million homes. So it's all resting up here. And what I see that you've done again here is you didn't know what you needed to do, but you knew you needed to do something. And the question that I have is, where were you right before that opportunity showed up to be on the radio? Were you in a good mental space? Were you in a depressed space? Like, oh, the book and the money and the
okay.
Like,
so
what's the catalyst?
I was frustrated. I was very frustrated. So
is this a good thing that you were frustrated? Like,
no.
Now that you look at it,
that I'm looking at it,
was that frustration what created the yes?
No, because I was banging my head against a wall.
Okay.
I wasn't anywhere. New ideas weren't coming to me.
Okay.
For sure. I had an amazing 2021 year. So real estate, I sold more than I had ever sold in the previous 19 years.
Wow.
In 2021. And I said, the last time I had made more money than I have ever made, we had the 2008 recession. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold all this money because I don't know what the future looks like. Before, I thought, I'm making so much money. I finally have the recipe. I'm doubling all the time. Wow, I'm fantastic. I've got the cookie recipe and I'm just pushing out cookies.
Made that mistake too.
And then that happened and it was like, what is this? So I'm like, I'm not going to learn that again. So I'm just going to put all the money in the bank and I'll see what 2022 holds. Now, I sell real estate. I help I helped you buy your home.
Mm-hmm.
But 70% of my business comes from investment real estate. So
Okay.
I'm helping people make money with their real estate.
Sure.
And I thought, this is no longer going to be making money for people. At these price points, stuff is just not going to be making sense. I'm probably not going to be selling anything next year, or not very much. I better hold on to all this money. And then I started realizing I was doing all the things I always do, make my cold calls, do this, do my mailers and whatever. And everybody was telling me the same thing. And I thought, what I would normally do in this situation is double down. But then Gail told me when I was on one of your calls,
Mm-hmm.
that's what gamblers do. And that's how they lose more money. And I said, I'm going to stop being me for a minute. Because I'm a really hard worker. The more I work, the more money I make. The more I work, the more money I make.
Yeah.
Right? I will double down. I will do more. I will do more. If it's not working, I'm going to do more.
I'm
So
a push on the pull door kind of guy too.
What's going on here? I am a push on the pull. I am stubborn in a lot of ways. That's what makes me determined and perseverance.
Yeah.
And gets me what I need to do.
Yeah.
And it also is what puts me in a hole.
Yeah.
Why are you digging a hole?
Right.
I wasn't digging a hole.
Right.
You're
We want to
in a
do
hole.
this. We want to do this. We don't want to do this. We don't want to do this.
Right.
We're sometimes not so good at this.
On that sharp little point. But I was giving myself, this is great. I told myself, great. Not making money when you had just made a ton of money, not great.
Sure.
Not a good feeling inside.
Sure.
Everything is. Anxiety and excitement in my body feel exactly like the same thing. It's energy bouncing. It's against itself.
And you can't tell the difference.
Well, I have to really ask a lot of questions.
Okay.
I'm like, why am I being so anxious? Well, you're not breathing. Why aren't I breathing?
Yeah. Think about this. Gosh, this is such a good lesson. You decided to do something that you had always wanted to do. You were doing it on an upswing when you were making money. It's called writing the book.
Mm-hmm.
Then the low time comes.
Mm-hmm.
So the analogy or the metaphor that's used is the best time to have planted a tree was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
The next best time is right now, because we're planting seeds of a future benefit.
Yes.
Thank God you wrote that book when you did, started it, that you happen to be in the bank when you're the most frustrated that you've ever been, can't see ideas, fog's in front of you.
And have plenty of time to sit in the bank and chat with a woman.
And isn't it funny how it works out?
Yeah.
And the bank teller, not you, the bank teller is like, hey, you need to go talk to this lady. And here you are now. What would it have been like if you had only thought about writing a cookbook? And you probably wouldn't be talking about that with the teller. You wouldn't be telling anybody about what you're doing. Right. You would have never gotten this opportunity. So what do you believe is the thread or the message that people really should take away from that experience that they might not be doing? Can I share mine?
You can.
Okay.
I think I might have my answer, but I'll hear yours first.
No. I want to hear yours first.
Okay.
Again.
Action, doing, contribution. I was contributing something. I wasn't contributing how I was making a living. I stayed in touch with all my clients, but I wasn't selling them anything because I knew how they made money.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to make them money with anything.
Yeah.
But I was keeping in touch with everyone. I was asking them different questions. Do you need help with your property management? How are you doing with your evictions? Because I have all that experience too. And I was just having conversations with the intent, there's nothing to sell them. Before, I was calling them because there was something to sell them or for them to buy something.
Now you're being a friend.
We're just here. I'm just here in a relationship.
Yeah.
So I was still doing those actions. And then I was giving myself permission that things weren't going to go my way for a little while. But I thought that was going to last 6 months. I didn't know that was going to last a year. And I said, isn't this perfect timing? This is the universe's way of giving me time to work on my book. But you know what? I didn't work on my book. I did work on my book some, but then I got frustrated because there was part of me that's like, I need money coming in every month.
Yep.
I have to pay my bills.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm not going to spend any more money on this book until this stuff starts coming, together. And this was a pet project born out of love and a desire to contribute in a space where I had only been a consumer. This is how I made money. This is how I paid my bills. This is how I bought the food. This is how I paid for things. So this was a real nag of, I'm questioning myself. Is real estate not going to be the way I make money anymore? I don't know that I can keep living these ups and downs. I don't
Mhm.
know I can go from making more money than I've ever made to having the worst year in 10 years. I don't like this. Do I really not want to be in real estate anymore? And when I told myself, I actually made a resume to go apply for a job as an editor's assistant at a magazine
I
company.
didn't know that.
I didn't tell anybody. I just did it. But I didn't mail it off because I said, you're not going to be in real estate anymore. Now what? I want to be in real estate.
Mm.
I've got 20 years plus experience that nobody else has, and I do it well.
Yeah, and you're damn
I
good
just
at it.
have to wait. Not right this second. But so then I never mailed it out. I never mailed that. But I gave myself permission to go make a job at $45,000 a year with none of the stress of being a business owner.
Right. But
I
you
want
wouldn't have
that.
been happy.
No.
But the point that you're making,
I took action. I was still
You took
taking
action.
action.
and I think a lot of people, whether they get depressed feelings, I wouldn't call it depression, I don't know, and I'm not a doctor, or if they get down on themselves or feel down on the luck, or they feel a massive amount of resistance, what most people do is they fall back and sit back.
Depression is an action.
Yeah. If you just start making moves forward,
Mhm.
and this is a faith-based thing, and I'm not talking faith in religion, it's a faith-based thing in yourself and in the universe and in the entirety of what exists, that if I just move forward, I will trip into myself.
Mhm.
And
Or at least I won't be there.
well, that was the first. That was, yeah, that's horrible.
That's horrible.
What I have often found is in the process, it's easier to steer a moving ship than it is one that's just still in the water, and
Momentum, right? You want that ship to be moving a little bit. To start it from nothing is so hard.
So my mom said this a lot, and she still says it. It's really funny, but like when she's having an argument with a significant other or something crappy's going, she goes and moves earth around.
Mhm.
So she's a huge gardener,
Mhm.
and so she will go and move plants from one side to the other, and she's done my whole. She used to make me rake the leaves 200 feet
I used to
back
move
in the
furniture.
woods. So just action.
I rearranged furniture.
Yeah.
Like this view is all wrong. I
Robyn,
move my desk from the left side to the right side. The computer goes on the other side. The files go to the back. Like
it's better than just sitting there and stewing on it.
Mhm.
Robyn's a cleaner,
Mhm.
so I'll come home and it's like, oh, what have you done? And she has a toothbrush out. It's like it's grout. It's like, whoa, I need to leave right now.
Yeah.
But I think you're absolutely right. The ability for you to motivate yourself to go do anything gives opportunity to you. Now, there comes a place in time, and you were talking about it, where you've gone and done anything and you realize those roads are all dead ends, or they feel dead ends. That brings me back to something else we were talking about earlier that I think is really, really important. I was really intrigued by it. You have the ability inside, not here, you said.
Right, not there.
Not in your brain, but in your gut. You have the ability to intuit whether what you were doing is the right path or the wrong path. You want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah. So probably trauma as a child. Right?
Who hasn't gotten it, right?
Who hasn't their childhood trauma? We should call our parents by their God-given name, not mom and dad, because it elicits all kinds of emotion.
Sure.
But I was a very intuitive kid. I think everyone is really intuitive, to be honest. I think everyone
has capacity.
Everyone has capacity. It's whether you're allowed to listen to it. Has society, your parents, everyone beat you out of that feeling?
Yeah, and they say actually you have until about 7 or 10 years old. Most people are walking around today as grown-up 7-year-olds because you learn everything. But I agree with you. I think that when the slate's clean, we all have the ability to hear other people as well as our own gut.
So I'll tell you the story. My father always nurtured my intuition. So he used to go. So this sounds like he should have been arrested when I tell the story now.
Okay. Disclaimer.
Disclaimer. This was in the 70s, which this was totally normal.
Yeah.
Right? Well, maybe not this part was normal, but it's not as bad as it is today. DYS wouldn't be called. My father was like, this is my daughter. She's coming out with me. But I'm going to go to the bar. I'm going to go to the pool hall. I'm going to go to the dog track.
Sure.
I went wherever.
Sure.
But he used to love to play chess. So part of the places he used to meet people to play chess was a physical bar. Dark bar. 18, everyone's drinking. No one's 18. Everyone's drinking. grown men playing in the middle of the day because he used to work odd shifts, so he would be able to do that. And so I would go in, and sometimes people would want to talk to you. Here's a 6-year-old girl in a bar, right? And this one guy, he always used to tease me. And I told my father, hey, I want to leave. I don't like it. I don't like this guy. And my father said, stop bothering her. And he was like, you should make her be nice to me. And my father says, no, she doesn't like you. Don't bother her. But what a reinforcement of, I'm not going to get up and leave. We're still going to play pool. You're just not going to bother my daughter. Right. My daughter says she doesn't like you. Don't bother her.
Right.
And he was being like, some guys are very much this way. Oh, what is this? Your stupid black cup? Oh, what do you need a black cup for? Yeah. You know, like whatever, they're giving you a hard time. That ribbing, guys like to rib, especially. And I can handle a certain amount of ribbing as a girl, considerably. But I didn't like his ribbing at all. I didn't like it at all. Whatever that vibe was, couldn't explain it. Even to this day, I couldn't explain it. I didn't like him. But my intuition, so I was given permission to feel what I felt. And then there was another time, really young as a small child, the phone rang and I said to my father, your mother died. And he was like, why would you say that? I picked up the phone. They were like, your mother's dead. And he was like, later on, like when we had this conversation, do you remember the time you told me my mother was dead before I found out? I said, our phone never rang that late at night. Like there was all kinds of other, I'm sure as an adult, I know. I was intuiting a couple of things together. I wasn't a genius.
Yeah, psychic.
Don't bring me to the lottery ticket. We're not going to win. Like I don't have that kind of intuition. But if I listen to my head, I will justify anything. You tell me what you want to do. I will put a line down the middle. I will give you 10 reasons why you should and 10 reasons why you shouldn't, intellectually. But if I go off my gut, I'm pretty good. And if I don't listen to my gut and I'm wrong, which a lot of times I am, then I never forgive myself for not listening to myself.
You know, what's the answer though? Because I agree with you, but I also have realized sometimes that I've listened to my gut, or I thought I was listening to my gut, and the truth is that I was operating in my own baggage.
Yeah. So sometimes we just we get triggered really easy, because the wound is not quite healed, or we have a new hole. The thing that we had stitched up got reopened or whatever, or we have a new injury that we're nursing. So sometimes it's the place in trauma that your spidey sensors are up, or you're projecting something that this person's not even doing because it reminded you of something else. So you kind of have to part and parcel that a little bit here and there.
So the only way that
if I hear it 3 times, so if like there's a particular person or a particular deal, we had something where I was like, why do we all of a sudden have to rush? We've been ready since August. And now all of a sudden it's the week before Thanksgiving. And if we don't hurry up and do this, we've been ready since August, dude. We'll sign your paperwork. Calm down. Yeah. Right. And then so you have that little weird thing, and then something else happens and you have another weird thing, and then a third thing happens.
That's enough for you.
That's not you're being triggered.
Yeah. For me, the way that I've always done it is I go ahead and I whether I'm triggered or not, and I listen to my gut, but I will revisit for one reason, my emotional state at that time. And I'm more curious, and this is just me. I don't want to be like Melba Toast. I don't want to be flat.
You'll never be Melba Toast. Just so you know.
But at the same time, you know, I grew up with a decent amount of trauma too. So I know what it feels like to feel like down, down, down. I know what it feels like to be manic, up, 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 up. And I wanted a little bit more consistency in my life. So I decided to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, because that's good for that. That modulates that emotion really well.
Definitely fixes that right up. But what I've learned to do is to go back in with less judgmental thoughts and eyes, revisit the situation and say, what is it about that I'm attaching to? And what it's helped me do is not do cyclic things. The most frustrating thing for me as an entrepreneur, but just as a human, I was this way. So I used to have to mow mom's grass, and then I'd drive 4 hours to go see dad, and then I'd have to mow his grass. I was a pissed off teenager, man.
Yes.
It's not happy.
And you cannot mow your own lawn.
So, this is a funny story. So I came home one time after mowing dad's, and mom, I'm typical 16-year-old teenager, and mom's like, go mow the yard. And I get about halfway down. It's a push mower, and she had 11 acres, but the front was a decent hill.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the thing is, just whatever, not working.
And you're like,
I grab it by the handle and I spin around 3 times and I shot put that thing all the way down to the field. Well, what I didn't know is mom was standing on the porch watching me do the whole thing. And she goes, all right, now go get it. And I said, yes, ma'am.
I just had my tantrum.
Right,
I'm done.
Get my tantrum over with. But what I used to do is I used to mow the lawn in different patterns just to see if there was a more efficient way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent the rest of my so the thing that I didn't do is go get educated.
Mm-hmm.
So I would rather go try it first,
Mm-hmm.
like massive action,
Mm-hmm.
fail, then try.
Then learn.
It took me a long time.
Well, we didn't have,
to learn.
To your defense, we didn't have YouTube, and you could go watch YouTube. What's the best way to
look
at mow a lawn?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up on movies like Stand By Me, where you just walk down the railroad track, and next thing you know, you're in another state, and you're like, I'm sorry,
witnessing a murder.
Right. But I just so over time I've learned how to slow down and to educate myself first and measure twice and cut once. That's part about becoming mature. But the point that I'm getting at is that I don't like doing anything, even if it's successful.
Mm-hmm.
This is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I'll break it. I like innovation. It's my third core value.
Mm-hmm.
I like constantly tinkering on the machine. Can we get 5 more RPM out of this thing? Oops, it blew the thing up. Why wasn't good enough? Good enough has never been good enough for me. And I just take that with a grain of salt in my personality type. The other thing that I learned from having that personality type is I often would not push me to higher and higher goals because I felt bad for not enjoying what was already right in front of me.
Interesting.
But that's when I started to learn about gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so taking action has always been a way for me too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if serotonin or dopamine starts flowing, but something will happen. I'll snap even momentarily out of a bad mood,
Mm-hmm.
and an opportunity will show up in my head. And then I'm off to, I will drop
Mm-hmm.
what I'm doing, whatever action it is, because
Mm-hmm.
that's stupid action.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cleaning or whatever.
Yep.
And I'll go take action on that opportunity, and immediately I'm back into that spot. And that's part of why I'm an entrepreneur, because I like innovating things. I like constantly asking, what does the next mountain look like?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that always scared me is when I was limiting myself. I realized I was putting glass ceilings over my head, saying this is all I'm ever going to be. This is all it's ever going to be. And
but you wanted more.
Always have wanted more.
Yeah.
And so what I started doing is surrounding myself with other people that want more, and stop judging people based upon what they have right now. I think one of the things that our world does that it makes sense why, but at the same time it can be kind of gross, is we see people that are successful, therefore they must be important. They're not more important than people that aren't successful. People are people. The whole flame inside of the iconic thing is everybody has a seed of greatness in them. I don't ever want to be the person that steps on somebody's value. So what if we just start surrounding ourselves with like-minded people that want to live a certain way, that let go of things that don't serve them, that move towards things that do, that truly believe in giving value to the world? How much better of a world can we live in? And instead of me waiting on somebody else to do it, I did it. And so all I've heard you say over this we've been here an hour, all I've heard you say over the last hour is, I chose to take action. And when I chose to take action, the other seeds that I had planted in the past finally became activated. And now that might be why I did it. You're in a Greek magazine. You're a writer in a Greek magazine. A lot of opportunities have come to you because of you writing that book.
Yeah.
That have nothing to do with selling the cookbook. If you sell 10 copies of that cookbook, you already win because of just what you have done from taking action to do it. And it begs the question, what comes next if you just keep taking action? If you just keep believing in yourself enough that failure is not final, that it's a learning opportunity, and that for the most part, if you look back at your entire life and career, you kind of win.
Yes, but I've had a lot of failures along the way.
Of course you have. Have you ever not eaten when you wanted to?
Right.
Have you ever not slept? Like, have you been in mortal danger because of your decisions? No. I mean, you and I used to look at real estate deals and you would have a gun strapped to your hip.
Yep.
And I'm like, Lisa, why do you have that gun strapped to your hip? And you're like, Chris. And I'm like, what? Look. And I look around like, oh, this is a bad neighborhood.
Very bad neighborhood.
So you have certainly done things and learned from things, but it's this ability for you to stand back up, brush yourself off, say, hey, that wasn't the best. I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. And if I look at this history of what I've done, I'm capable. I just have to figure out what I want to do. And that becomes the purpose part.
Yep.
You've had autonomy for a long time. In fact, I don't think you will ever operate outside of autonomy in your life again.
No.
Just knowing who you are as a person.
Freedom is one of my core values.
Now you're on this pathway for you're defining your purpose. You're not asking for what is it. See, the reason you couldn't find it is because you kept searching for something that was already there. And it was the fog that was get used. And once the fog cleared up, you're like, oh, it's the path. Yeah. And now that you have that, you're not as afraid to master. Like, I listened to you and Robyn on the radio show. Now, I remember the first time you were trying to say all those letters and numbers.
Oh
like,
my goodness. And
woman.
I want to quit. I would want to just like put the mic thing because, you know, you're just
WXYZ 95.7 and da-da-da-da-da AM. And I was like, oh.
I have to look at the window when it's in reverse. And she's always like, how do you look at that in reverse? I'm like, I can only read in reverse. Like, I've trained myself to read it in reverse, you know? And that's the thing is, oh my God, I'm a beginner. And I'm terrible. And I have to go be terrible. I was telling Robyn on the radio that there's an element that I forget. And sometimes if you just embrace it, and my new thing is I've got to embrace the suck. There's some really sucky stuff that has to happen. Right. And instead of procrastinating because I hate the sucky thing, if I just start doing the sucky thing for the amount of time that I need to do it, at some point you cross the barrier where your brain is trying to do something else, your body's trying to do something else, right? And you just settle in to a point you can do it forever. But there is a window of suck, whether you're running, starting an exercise program, whether you're sitting down to do your cold calling. All of a sudden you sit down to do your I like cold calling because I'm good on the phone.
Yeah.
I'm good on the phone. I've been doing it a long time. I first did cold calling by answering the phone. And then I got, I would do 5 cold calls and I'd be exhausted, have to lie on the couch, pet a cat, have some caffeine, some sugar, eat a cookie, and then I could get back to it.
Yourself
Yeah, I'd be like, you're doing such a good job. You're doing such a good job for all those no's. But now it's a different thing, right? But for some people, cold calling or some part of their job, that is the suck. And they're like, I don't want to do sucky things. So they will do, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to refile all my files. I'm going to clean out my inbox so there's no unread messages. I'm going to do, no. That's not important. You have to do the thing you don't want to do that stinks. That just, and it's going to stink. And you're like, this stinks. Do the stinking thing. Because that will get you to the point. You have to do, like, if it has to be done, and if it doesn't have to be done, or if someone else can do it, all the better. Identify that.
Yes.
But if it has to be done, it has to be done. Do it early while you have energy. Do it during, don't put other things in, because then the whole day goes by and you've effectively procrastinating a whole nother day of doing the thing you need to do.
When, one of our companies is a remodeling company, and I used to be the main remodeler in that. Started in Virginia, shut that one down, moved up here, started again. And I tell you what, after owning a business for 10 years and having multiple employees, to have to shut it down because of that recession that was, I couldn't figure out. So I had to shut it down. To then coming up here, getting a job for 3 years and starting a business over again. It's like, oh my God, I'm starting over again, just like I did when I was 24. That was a really hard feeling. But as I brought employees on, what I started to teach them is, on these jobs that we're doing, when we show up first thing in the morning, we're going to do the most horrible thing that none of us want to do on this job right now. Every single person after that 2 or 3, 4 hours or that particular day, the mood elevated immediately because it was done.
Yes. They didn't have to dread it. They didn't have to dread the day.
When you push all of your problems, so you do the 95%, and then you deal with them at the end. And the reason this made sense to me is because I started off as a painter.
Mm-hmm.
So builders would have their carpenters come in, the drywall guys come in, and I have to make it look beautiful. And this is high-end stuff that we're doing in a resort in Virginia. And I have to put lipstick on the pig.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, there's not enough caulk for me to fix the gap between that baseboard and that drywall. So guess what? Chris had to learn to become a drywaller.
Yeah.
But what I started learning is a lot of these people would, and by the way, the painter is usually the least paid person.
Because everyone ran out of money. That and landscaping.
Okay.
We got 2 bushes.
Right.
Why are there only 2 bushes on this front lawn? They ran out of money.
So, but they would leave all of the problems to be fixed by the people that they're paying the least. And it's not even done properly to begin with. And that's where I started to see that if we adopt an opposite philosophy, we'll have a completely different result. And that's what started teaching me how to become we became really, really good at painting. 90% of painting is prep. People don't understand that. It's not putting color on wall. There are so many things, and there are different levels of painting. There's actually 5 levels. I won't get into it, but we would spend days and days and days taping, sanding, caulking, preparing that material so that when we put the color on it, it was one shot and done. Now, back in the day, everybody wanted eggshell. The problem is that the technology...
You're triggering me.
The technology wasn't there, and then the guy would come in and knock his tool bag into the wall and scrape it. We would have to mud it and patch it, and then we would paint that little section. It's like, now you can see that when the light shines, you see it. So now you have to repaint the whole wall. So that's how I eventually became a general contractor. Is like, I can't tolerate this way of doing things anymore. Go to the next level. I can't tolerate this way of doing things anymore. I can't tolerate this way of doing things anymore. Then I came up here and I worked with somebody that was highly successful at design build. And I said, oh my God, I didn't even know that it could be done this way before. And I put that akin to, then I joined the mastermind group, paid over $100,000 to be a part of it. And people go, well, you did what? Yeah, I wasn't at a place in my life.
You invited me. And I was like, what?
Texas?
This calls what?
Yeah.
And you're like, but it's amazing. And I did see how amazing it was.
I was able to accomplish in 2 years what I hadn't accomplished in 20, but I started giving myself permission to elevate to levels where people were doing things in a much different way than I was. So instead of Chris taking action for the rest of his life, doing the same thing, running through employees, 1 in, 1 out, 1 in, 1 out, don't show up, get paid, don't show up, all that kind of stuff. I started going, what if I have other people just teach me how? And yes, it cost me money. Yes, I had to humble myself. Yes, I had to have beginner mind again, like you're talking about. But what's come out of it is the ability for me now to see that and go, well, how would I do that just a little bit different? And I see that you're doing the exact same thing. And the reason I'm so happy to bless and help entrepreneurs is because I believe that it's part of what's going to save the entire world is this ability to innovate and not keep going, well, grandma cut the ham off at both ends. Yeah, dumbass, it's because she had a little teeny pan. You got a pan this big now. You don't need to waste the ham anymore.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you should have asked that question. Why? And I see you asking the why and not being afraid of what the actual answer is anymore. And I really want other people to give themselves permission to go, yeah, it's going to suck a little bit. That's okay. It's not going to last forever.
Yes.
Because on the other side of that, instead of narrowing our focus because of fear, we start opening up our eyes to what opportunities lie around us. And from what I see you're doing now, and even the reports from Robyn when you and I don't talk, like you're living the best version of your life right now that you ever have.
Well, I'm also in a different energy space. I'm excited to get up. I'm excited to go do things. I'm excited to be in my real estate business. I'm excited to be at the radio station. I'm excited, even though there's a lot of sucky parts of it, the overall, I'm not frustrated. I'm not frustrated. And part of there's cycles and seasons to everything. But the problem is don't get stuck anywhere in one space too long.
Yeah.
And I think you had said something earlier and I was like, oh my God, that's such a gem. When I listen to this, I'm going to end up writing it down. But I think there's a piece of we don't know what we don't know.
Sure.
Right? Or what's worse than we don't know what we don't know is I think I know best. Because sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. The most important piece between those two things is asking better questions. Asking better questions to figure out if this is a space coming from trauma or if this is really my intuition telling me something. Ask yourself a couple of questions. Why do you feel that way? Why do you feel like your spidey senses are up? What about this person is, oh, I don't like the way he talks to me, or I don't like the way whatever, or I don't like the way everything is urgent and important. There's no communication that's not, if I don't answer within 5 minutes, the world is going to blow up. Is it?
Yeah.
Is that just, so do I not like the communication style? Do I not like, ask yourself, because we're going to have to deal with difficult people. We're going to have to deal with, it's really good to line up with people that line up with you. But every once in a while, you're going to have to deal with people that,
of course,
that don't line up.
Of course. And they're chameleons that people change once the deals are made.
And you're not pressing my operating system. You're not working within my operating system well. I operate really well in this system, and you're not operating in my system, right? So, but just keep asking better questions. And sometimes you have to ask 10 questions to even get to the right question.
That's very true. There's a technique. I think we were actually talking to you about it at a party at your house. I think it was you. The first question is not the real question. The first question leads to you asking, well, how do you do that then? Or what about that? Or how come? And then eventually 5, 6, 7 questions, it's the eureka question that matters. And it's an exercise that we don't take ourselves through.
It was really interesting. The book Never Split the Difference?
Yeah.
Is it Chris Vaughn?
Is
the author? Name. Something. He says, ask how and what questions when he's negotiating with, say, the terrorist or the kidnapper.
Okay.
Because when you ask a how question, how are we going to release the hostages? How are we going to get more money? You have to really think, how am I solving this problem? If you're always asking the same questions and not getting better answers, change your questions. Who, what, where, when, why, how? Go in there and and keep asking the same one 3 times. Go back and ask the same. Once you do the who, what, where, go back into the top. Ask them again, because then you get deeper. Because 50% of the time, get into an argument with your spouse, right? First answer is automatic answer. Second answer is automatic answers. Third answer is stop asking me this question and you know the answer. 4th time, maybe, I'm hungry.
Right.
We're going to continue to argue until I've had something to eat.
Right.
But think of it that way. Think of like when you ask your kid, how was school? Good. Fine. No. Right. That's not communication. You have to get.
It's one of the things Robyn's brilliant at. I've watched her with her kids, and they don't communicate on the surface level whatsoever because of it, because she has activated their thinking, and she started that when they were really young. So any parents that are listening to this right now, like having a real relationship with people, and it brings value to that human. They feel seen, they feel heard, they know that their voice matters. Hey, how was your day? Great.
Yeah.
And then move
and
on.
If you really don't want to know the answer, don't ask.
Don't ask the question. Yes, it's not a box to check off. It's the human being on the other end of it. I really liked having you on the show. Thanks for coming.
I loved being on the show. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. If people want to find you, talk to you, want to do real estate with you, want to buy your cookbook eventually, where do they find you?
Okay, so on the socials, I only have Instagram, except for the radio station. We have Facebook. So for real estate, it's RealtyScapeBrokerage.com.
Okay.
So www. And then I do have an Instagram handle, which is RealtyScape Brokerage.
Okay.
And then for the book, Stars at Night Publishing is the Instagram handle for that.
Okay.
And then I also do have a starsatnightpublishing.com website.
Starsatnight.com.
Stars at Night Publishing.
Publishing.com.
Yep.
Okay.
And then we'll have a QR code that you can buy the cookbook there, actually.
Okay.
And then Lisa and Robyn on the Mic is our radio show. We're on WSMN.
Okay.
1590 AM, 95.3 FM in
Look how
Nashua.
good you do that now.
And you can watch, stream, and listen on WSMN.live, on YouTube Live, and on Facebook Live.
That's pretty cool. You guys are really, you girls have come in there and taken over.
I know.
That
I know.
like the whole scene's changing on that radio show.
The
and I love
mics
it.
are changing. The stations
Well,
changing.
I remember the last one, like you and Robyn can actually see each other now.
Mhm.
So like they've moved everything around. They're
Mhm.
making it a better production facility. I'll make sure that we put all of these ways to connect with you on the page
Excellent.
when
Thank
we
you.
throw it up there. And this will be this. If everybody doesn't know, we're on Spotify, Apple, we're across the board with
Mhm.
everything that we're doing.
And I was saying, so thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
And I was half thinking, and we should open up the section and talk about no as a complete sentence.
No is a complete sentence. We can read it to them sometime. Well, why don't we come back on? You and I are getting ready to start doing some fun stuff together in the real estate world. I'm excited about that. But we'll come back on and we'll maybe when you launch your book.
Yeah, that'll be perfect.
How about we come back on when you launch your book and we can talk about some of the experiences, because you and Robyn also have some pretty good ideas. There's the wear the dress, watching you all go around locally to business owners and love on them while you're doing what you love to do, shop and have fun and all that kind of stuff. I think there are a lot.
We are having a good time.
Oh, it's apparent. The photos make it apparent. The
And
stuff
some of
that
the
she brings
comments-
home that should make it apparent.
Some of the stuff, like some of the comments are like, I love watching you have a good time on the radio station.
Yeah, it is good.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different feel. And it's not, you're not trying to sell anybody a concept. You're just being who you are. And I think that's why people are responding to it the way they are.
And I think coming from a place where this doesn't have to make money yet.
Yeah.
You know, like I went to the radio station not giving it the pressure that it was supposed to perform. And it was just supposed to be a little bit of art, a little bit of fun, a little bit of good time.
Well, not only are you doing that, it looks like you're going to start making money at it. So congratulations.
Thank you. Well, no money's yet, but as soon as the first dollar comes, I'll let you know.
All right. Let us know.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for being a part of our show today. Again, this is Lisa Parda. I'm Chris Whitehead. We'll see you in the trenches. Take care.
See you in the trenches.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
Hey, friend. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please leave a review and subscribe to catch future casts. If you really enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it so others can benefit from it as well. I'll see you in the trenches.
Try to catch me howling at the moon.